But this weekend severe weather outbreak actually related to what's happening here. So let's talk about California and the much needed rainfall that they are going to get. Take a look at this. San Diego, potential for more than an inch as we get through Saturday. Since 1940, total May rainfall has exceeded 1 inch. Only once, and that's when they got almost 1.5 inches in 1977, so it doesn't happen often, and you know this is an area that needs it. We've been watching these dips in the jet stream come out of the west and move in over the central U.S., get that severe weather going, but in the case, especially on a day like today, you're actually going to get rain, some mountain snow out of it, and yes, maybe even some of the more potent showers and thunderstorms, a little bit of hail. We're seeing some lightning off of San Francisco there, and we've got some rain showers just off the coast of Los Angeles. But take a look, Las Vegas. You've had some showers roll on through, and it's been enough to produce some small hail. Take hours, and in fact, a few days. You may get some hail with these. But the good news is you're going to see a lot of moisture move into Southern California. As we mentioned, maybe as much as 1 inch over the next few days. So that's really good news. Los Angeles, a few hit and miss showers and thunderstorms, but that threat of rainfall, a good threat moving even into tomorrow. But that severe weather outbreak starts out west. We want to bring in our storm specialist, Carl Parker, to kind of break down what that all means and how this will be impacting the weekend weather.
Yeah. Now.
All right, Vivian, Carl, looking at this, looks vaguely familiar.
Yes,
a little too familiar because the water vapor showing that punch coming out of the west.
You know, what's interesting about that, too, is that we know that El Nino is kicking in, and it could be a fairly strong El Nino, and one of the signatures of El Nino is a lot more stormy weather in California. Now, that would be good.
Right.
For the most part, it would get them out of the drought, but you're also talking about a lot of severe weather, and here we've got another one of these big features coming out in the next couple of days. So here's tomorrow's forecast, and we've got severe weather in Nebraska and Kansas and Oklahoma. We think the most concentrated area of shear in the atmosphere is going to be right there in Nebraska, so that's where we've got a 4 out of 10 on the Torcon, and we've got 3s to the north and to the south of that.
And when we say shear, that's just the spin that's going to make those big storms rotate.
Yeah, you know, if you put a pencil in your hand and you move one over top of the other, you're going to roll that pencil, and that rolling motion is exactly what is getting those storms rotating. Now, going into Saturday, you've got this broad dry line, so that's the division between the warm and humid air coming from the Gulf of Mexico and drier air coming out of the west. So that's the focal point, that's a trigger for new storm development, and we wanted to talk a little bit more in depth about the dry line and come down and take a look at a cross section here. And what's interesting about it is you've got this warm and humid air, this very buoyant air that's across a lot of Texas and the plains, and then the drier air comes up in over top of that. So initially what you've got is this cap, the thermal profile, where as you go up it gets a little cooler, but then it gets warmer and then it gets cooler. And as soon as that happens, then you can't get development. Thunderstorms can't develop, so it builds like a pressure cooker almost, and we call that severe clear, when you've got all this buoyant energy, but the atmosphere can't tap into it because of that change in the thermal profile. But eventually, this convergence, because air is coming together at that boundary, it can't go into the ground, it's got to go up. The convergence creates this uplift in the atmosphere, and so eventually you can overwhelm that cap, and then kapow, storms just take off along the dry line, and that's exactly what we think is going to happen on Saturday.
I think it's a fascinating graphic, too, because it kind of shows, too, that the warm and humid air is less dense. It's lighter than the drier, which sometimes it's hard to imagine that, but that's the physics behind it.
Exactly right. Exactly right. It's a boundary just like a cold front, even though it's warm on either side of the boundary. And so here's a look at the mid-level wind that's coming out on Saturday. There's going to be a lot more of that on Saturday, and we're going to see this shear that we talked about, not only in terms of direction. You've got directional shear where winds are coming from different directions at different levels, but also this mid-level wind is a lot faster. And so again, we get the pen rolling here, and once we do that, storms can tap into that and start to rotate. So that is going to be the worry on Saturday, a very large area of concern here across the central and southern plains. And the Torcons are fairly high. It wouldn't be surprising to see the numbers come up a little bit before we get into Saturday. So there's a 4 out of 10 in eastern South Dakota. It is a 5 in Kansas, and then we've got a 4 to the south of that down into Oklahoma. So it could be a fairly active Saturday, just as we saw last Saturday. A lot of coverage.
And not to mention talking about snow with this, so maybe another all-season kind of weekend.
Absolutely. And here, by the way, is Sunday, another big day potentially for severe weather in the Midwest and then down across 44 there into the middle Mississippi Valley. So once again, you're going to have very strong mid-level wind coming up, and there's going to be a lot of shear in the atmosphere. And so Sunday could be like last Sunday, where we see some tornadoes way up there into the Midwest, Wisconsin, Iowa, and also across parts of Illinois. So another very busy weekend ahead for severe weather.
Not to mention the heat that'll be building in parts of the east, so a lot going on. Of course, we've got you covered. Carl, Vivian, and I will be back for another hour of Weather Center Live. That's coming up after.
As much as possible, because we're still dealing with a drought, even though not as bad as it was, say, last year. Take a look, in particular, the state of Texas, where we had 65% of the state in a drought, say, December of last year.
And if you think about how significant that is, because it's been like that for a while, time step forward, taking you through January, February, March, and April, and you will see the red area kind of holding its own and then shrink, because May certainly in this area has put down a lot of moisture, a lot of rain. Look at the current stats now, 36% of the state.
No problems in terms of near the Red River, which is great news. Let's talk more about the Lake Ray, Roberts, Texas area.
And look at just a week ago, way down at just over 632 feet. Now you're at 639. The trend is upward, and that's the case for a lot of lakes in Texas.
Absolutely. So here's a look at the past 7 days. We've had anywhere from 8 to 12 inches, mainly near the Red River and even down there around the Houston area. So that is definitely good news.
It is indeed.
Okay. Well, Texas is not the only state. In fact, let's go in depth with the drought situation and bring in Doug Carlson from the California Department of Water Resources.
Doug, help us break down some of the latest drought data. How everybody thinking, not just today or tomorrow for that matter, but into the weekend. Believe it or not, it's the weekend before Memorial Day. So it's kind of amazing that we're there already. But the setup is very familiar, as May has panned out, very much May-like. We've got the big dip in the jet stream that serves as the power, the lifting power and punch to all of the heat and humidity out ahead of it. And boy, do we have it in spades here through the central U.S. as we get in through tomorrow. Dew points way up into the 60s here. But we also have the dry line, as Vivian was showing, the dry air, the moist air, that can also be very much like a front and lifts the air, and that creates showers and thunderstorms. So you put all of that together, and the area that we're concerned about as we get in through tomorrow, from Scottsbluff, Kearney, Wichita down to Amarillo, primary threat: hail, damaging winds. Cannot rule out tornadoes either, and of course the heavy rainfall. Now we get into the weekend and we still have all of those ingredients. In fact, gets a little bit of a push to the north. So now we've got Fargo and Des Moines in the mix, as well as Kansas City. Once again, we find ourselves central North Texas in the severe threat again. By Sunday, it's now into the Midwest, so Madison, Duluth, Minneapolis. Time to think about severe weather again with that heavy rainfall and the chance of tornadoes. So let's kind of look at the tornado threat for the weekend. You can see North Platte by Friday evening, a 4 out of 5. Omaha, 5 out of 10. This for you Saturday afternoon and evening. And then into Madison, Wisconsin area, 5 out of 10. And that is Sunday evening. So from now, Vivian, until the end of the weekend, we're in it.